I know some folks are kind of smarting, to use the old-timey term, from the turnout in Florida with Alan Grayson's race, as well as with Tim Canova. Kind of saw some folks a little upset with the way Tim Canova, well, actually both of them refused to endorse their opponents, but Tim Canova had like a parting shot. And there's a whole discussion about entitlement and sore losers and stuff. I mean, I just think he called it like he sees it. The evil empire had to come crack down with the swiftness to beat him and his team of volunteers back. And I think that race, I think when you look at the work that was done in such a short period of time, particularly when you're talking about someone who has been established in that district as a leader for such a long time. And it took President Obama, Vice President Biden, John Lewis, and a whole host of other characters from the Democratic establishment to come, and
neoliberal dream team. Yeah. So.
Yeah, pretty much. Right. And you had like just regular people. So I know that a lot of people were discouraged, and I don't think this is an issue. I have not seen anything to allege that this was like a rigged situation, that there were discrepancies. Now, I will get into quickly a case that is happening in St. Louis, where there is a situation with some rigging and other issues in a Democratic race that happened during the Missouri primary weeks back. But I haven't seen any of that, any voter irregularities or anything. I mean, sometimes even with the best of efforts, the chips just don't fall in your favor. Does that mean we give up? Does that mean that we lost? Does that mean that we didn't do good enough? No. But this is definitely a time to assess, and look at, as we look towards 2018, because doing what Tim Canova and his campaign did in maybe 6 months to mount a congressional campaign and fundraise. I mean, this is stuff that takes people a long time to be able to do and master. So like I said last night on my show, the way you guys rock. Okay.
Absolutely.
You rock. You are awesome. You are the movement. And we don't need to get into all of the particularities about who did what when, because quite honestly, when we look at some other races that happened yesterday, like we look at Arizona, first off, we look at Florida races. There were a lot of races that people weren't necessarily paying attention to. And I forgot my cheat sheet, so I can't rattle them all off. But there were some really
I could help you.
There were some really great wins that happened in Florida. One that tickles me to death is Angela Corey was unseated. Angela Corey. Now I don't know, and so here's a caveat to that. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about the woman that replaced her. I know nothing about the woman the woman that won the Republican primary. But having Angela Corey be unseated, if you're not familiar with Angela Corey, she actually was just profiled about a week ago in The Nation as potentially the country's worst prosecutor.
The cruelest prosecutor. Yeah, I saw that.
The cruelest prosecutor.
Yeah.
There's been so much with, issues with her and over sentencing and over prosecuting of juveniles. If you all remember the Marissa Alexander case with the woman who alleged being abused by her husband, and she did the warning shot to kind of try and get out of the house. She couldn't get out. She tried to use a stand your ground defense.
That's so sad.
Like her case was so egregious, and she prosecuted that woman to the fullest extent, her team. And then it's also her team that botched the George Zimmerman trial. Watching that was like, getting a root canal. It was just ridiculous. So she has a history, and some people might say, well, she's a tough prosecutor. Nah, it's something more than that with her.
There's a line between tough and cruel, right? I mean, It's one thing to be a prosecutor and say, okay, I'm going to put away the bad guys, or even err on the side of public safety when you make your decisions. But when you choose to make decisions as if people are something that you can just throw away, right? Especially young people, how she jailed young people.
Yeah, like the jailing of young people. Like I think
mistakes.
And I think they profiled a young man. I think his name was Christian, who, I mean, You have kids who, and again, you know, people, we can talk about recidivism. We can talk about, you know, punishment for crimes and things like that. You know, that's definitely something we should all talk about. But when you look at the history, when you look at her cases, when you look at the overzealous nature of her prosecutions, there's a problem there, and this is well documented. So to see her get unseated, I mean, it gave me joy personally. Again, like it's similar with you know, Anita Alvarez in Chicago.
Yeah,
she
absolutely.
was the prosecutor in the Laquan McDonald case, who, you know, helped kind of push things. And there were other issues with her as well. But this strategy of unseating, you know, state's attorneys, prosecutors, right? It is something to consider as a part of our toolbox.
Because go ahead. We have, I mean, if we as a community decide that someone should pay a political price, and because we're such a huge voting bloc, especially on the Democratic side, right? Because we're such a huge voting bloc, we should use our, just like every other constituency, use our voting power to get the things we want and need in our communities. And that shouldn't be something that's frowned upon. It shouldn't be something that's that's odd. Like every other constituency can reach out and ask for something or demand something except us.
Well, she's a Republican. I will say this: Angela was a Republican. Angela Corey's a Republican.
I'm sorry,
but from what I was just asking,
I'm just saying, yeah.
No, I agree with you. I do definitely agree with you. Yeah. But what I was asking, some folks down in Florida, and they were saying like people actually like change registration and cross over. Now I haven't actually verified this. This is anecdotal, but people cross over to vote against her. There was I'm trying to think of the sister's name. It's just skipping around. There were some other races in Florida. One of the current members of this Congressional Black Caucus, one of the sitting, you know, U.S. House of Representatives members, who's actually under indictment right now. She lost her election. She just was indicted for issues, I believe, involving using a fundraiser as a personal slush fund. So some fraud type activity. So she actually lost her race as well. But there's another young attorney. Well, I don't know how young she is, but she looks young. She became the first Black woman. She won her race, so she's the first Black woman to be state's attorney.
That's awesome.
I forget the county in Florida. So there are actually several other races. There are a couple of groups I follow that are like different regional political groups. And so there were a couple other folks who did unseat, you know, more establishment types who did run upstart. They may not have necessarily been Bernie Crats per se, but so here's the thing. We got to get out of this, like this purism, right? Because there are some really good people out there who may not have necessarily jumped on the bandwagon, so to speak, but they run really good campaigns, and they're definitely about the people. And they, you know, you should look at people in your community, people who are running locally, and say, hey, is this person worth my respect? Because don't get it twisted, just because people jumped on the Bernie wagon from a political standpoint, they may or may not actually be the best person for your community. I think there are some folks who have been out there who are running as Bernie Crats. I mean, maybe they're saying good stuff, but you really should just look closely on a case-by-case scenario. There are certain people, like I said, like Tim Canova is someone we got to know over the last several months, and it's like, okay, great, we can get behind him. But to just descend into, oh, it's all rigged, we're never going to get anywhere. We're never going to be able to move the needle if that's all we focus on.
Yeah, and we've got to vote smart, right? I mean, I believe truly, I'm a true believer in principled voting, right? Vote your principles, right? But you also hate to say principles should be on a sliding scale, but at the same time, you should be understanding nobody's perfect, right? If you've got some rock solid principles, like I don't like a guy with blue eyes, or whatever your thing is. If you got some rock solid principles, I'll never down you for voting along those lines. But at the same time, we also have to understand that our vote should be used to improve our lot, right? So it's a hard line to draw, but everybody should be aware of principles and voting to help your future, right?